Imagine you're 16. You look in the mirror and all you see is what you're missing. The perfect jawline, broad shoulders, a flawless skin and symmetrical eyes. Then TikTok tells you you're only 80% hot, and on Reddit someone comments you're a 4 out of 10. This isn't a movie. This is everyday life for millions of young people who open social media and feel like they're not enough. Welcome to the world of Looksmaxxing. In this presentation, we're talking about representation and beauty standards in media, specifically red pill content and Looksmaxxing. We'll go through the key concepts, show how media represents beauty, explore its impact on young people, and bring in real-life examples and data, all followed by a conclusion. Now, let's start with the definitions. One of the central ideas is the red pill ideology. It's part of a broader online space known as the manosphere, where men discuss masculinity and gender roles. But it's widely known for promoting misogyny, anti-feminism, and harmful stereotypes about women. The name red pill comes from the movie The Matrix, where taking the red pill means waking up to the truth. But here, the truth is framed in a very anti-feminist way. They claim modern society favors women and disadvantages men in what they call a gender-centric world. Another core belief is that women are hypergamous, meaning they're wired to seek out only the most attractive, wealthy, and dominant men. Anyone not matching this alpha male ideal is labeled as beta and therefore weak or irrelevant. As a result, men are told to raise their value on the sexual marketplace by improving their LMS, looks, money, and status. Now let's take a closer look at the L. This is where Looksmaxxing comes in. Looksmaxxing means optimizing your appearance to boost your sexual market value. It includes working out, skincare routine, cosmetic surgery, or even bone smashing. It is seen as a way to climb the hierarchy towards the alpha ideal. There are even websites like Looksmaxxing.com that promote this as science-backed self-improvement. They claim looking better leads to more success in health, career, and relationships. On the first slide, we saw it in action. Young men comparing jawlines, posting transformations, or asking about the candle tilt. There are even tutorials on how to mew, apps that analyze facial symmetry, and acne kits being marketed. These tools are framed as self-improvement, but they often reinforce one idea. You're not enough the way you are, so change. A 2024 study also shows these beliefs don't actually help most of the young men who follow them. Instead, they increase insecurity and isolation. One participant, for example, said, "I used to struggle with not being able to achieve the alpha status and felt like less of a man." The problem in general is that these communities often attract vulnerable young men that already feel isolated, insecure, or rejected. But instead of helping, the ideology often makes it worse. And that is why this topic is so relevant, especially today. We live in a digital world full of filters, AI beauty, and glow-up trends. Looksmaxxing shows how beauty standards affect way more than our appearance. They shape identity, self-worth, and mental health. In this culture of constant comparison, many people feel, if I'm not attractive, I'm not enough. And that is why we need to talk about media representation and beauty norms, openly and critically.
In our communications course, we spend a lot of time talking about how beauty standards affect women, but now we're shifting the focus, because men aren't immune to these pressures either, and in fact are being targeted in new and increasingly intense ways, especially through online spaces like TikTok and YouTube by red pill ideology and Looksmaxxing. So let's take a step back and ask, how do we even know what's considered attractive or desirable? But that's where media representation comes in. Media representation is about how the media portrays certain groups, identities, and ideals, including what it means to be beautiful, masculine, or worthy. These portrayals aren't just entertainment, they shape how we as audiences understand social norms, gender roles, and even how we see ourselves. When male influencers constantly promote the idea that you need a perfect chiseled jawline, six-pack abs, and financial dominance to be high value, that's representation. And over time it can feel like this is the standard, this is what you're supposed to be. Let's break down how this influence actually works with 3 key communication theories. First, cultivation theory by George Gerbner. This theory says that the more we expose to specific messages in the media, the more we start to believe their reality. So if a guy is watching red pill creators or Looksmaxxing content every day, eventually he might start to believe that status and looks are all that matter. Over time, those narratives begin to shape how he sees the world. Second is the social comparison theory by Leon Festinger. This one's pretty simple but powerful. We compare ourselves to others to understand where we stand. So when guys are constantly comparing themselves to influencers or unrealistic beauty ideals online, it can create deep insecurity. Why don't I look like that? Why don't I have that lifestyle? And finally, Stuart Hall's encoding-decoding model paired with the concept of audiencing. This theory reminds us that media messages are created with certain intentions, encoding. but audiences don't always interpret them in the same way, which is decoding. For example, a red pill video might be encoded as self-improvement advice, but a young viewer might decode it as, I'm not good enough unless I change everything about myself. With audiencing, we also look at how different people, especially young, impressionable men, engage with and react to this content. Comments like, I need jaw surgery ASAP, show how deeply these messages are sinking in.
Red pill and looksmaxxing content can have a wide range of effects on young people and society. One of the most concerning is its potential to negatively impact mental health. Teenagers in particular are in a crucial development phase where they are forming their identities and navigating emotional and social challenges. During this time they may feel powerless in their environment and turn trends like looksmaxxing as something they are able to control. At this age, their brains are still developing in areas related to decision-making, self-esteem and emotional regulation. Platforms like TikTok, with their powerful algorithms, often push this kind of extreme content directly into users' feeds, reinforcing harmful ideas at a time when young people are most impressionable. The obsession with reaching an ideal standard of beauty can lead to deep dissatisfaction with their own life and appearance. People become overly self-conscious about their looks, which contributes to a disordered body image and the pursuit of unrealistic standards shaped by filters, plastic surgery, and gym culture. Over time, this can lead to serious mental health issues, including body dysmorphic disorder and eating disorders. The constant pressure to keep up can also trigger anxiety, depression, and even isolation or loneliness. But it's not just about appearance, it's also about ideology. A lot of red pill content reinforces outdated gender stereotypes and even misogynistic beliefs. For young men, it can encourage hypermasculine ideals like emotional suppression, dominance, and toxic masculinity. Women, on the other hand, are frequently objectified or reduced to traditional roles where their value is based on appearance or submissiveness. At the same time, women are portrayed as manipulative or inferior. Some of the rhetoric pushes the so-called feminine imperative, which suggests that society is biased in favor of women at the expense of men. These beliefs of repressed men can also lead to dangerous consequences, including increased gender-based violence or femicides. This content can also shift how people view romantic relationships. The red pill content and ideology often promotes mistrust, manipulation, and a power-driven approach to dating, emphasizing control and dominance over equal partnerships. Concepts like toxic masculinity are reinforced, making healthy relationships more difficult or even impossible. Additionally, there's the nice guy fallacy, which mocks the idea to be kind and respectful as a tactic to attract a partner, further fueling insecurity and distrust. Social pressures can even run deeper. The push to invest in expensive beauty products or treatments can create serious financial strain, leading to feelings of inferiority and less confidence for those who can't afford to keep up. Some who do invest in their appearance might feel a false sense of privilege or status, ignoring the deeper social inequalities that remain and are fostered through these ideologies. However, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone is affected in the same way. Many individuals are able to engage with these ideologies critically and find more balanced interpretations rather than obsession and control.
Let's take a look at where this type of content thrives. The most visible starting point is TikTok, where trends like looksmaxxing, bone smashing, and more are just a scroll away. Under the hashtag looksmaxxing, you'll find thousands of posts from transformation tutorials to extreme beauty tips. Then there are red pill forums and websites. Places like lookism.net, incel.me, and similar communities serve as echo chambers and often veer into outright misogyny, racism, and self-harm rhetoric. The Instagram and YouTube algorithms play a huge role too, feeding users endless content on male improvement. These platforms reward outrage and engagement, like we have seen in the Netflix documentary The Social Dilemma. So once you interact with one red pill or looksmaxxing post, you're deep in the rabbit hole. Lastly, we have Reddit forums like r/howtolooksmax, where people share their photos and ask for advice. But instead of support, they get pressure to conform. On the surface, it might look like a support group, but in reality, it often becomes a space of radicalization. For the first case study, we analyzed the following TikTok.
Would you rather marry a guy who is rich, buys you a ton of fancy shit, but cheats on you? Or marry a broke dude who can't buy you shit and he doesn't cheat?
I'm gonna say the first guy. Here's why!
This is why the red pill community exists!
Posts react with shock, saying, "This is why the red pill community exists," as a justification for the radical movement. The comment section explodes with agreement, generalizing all women as gold diggers or shallow. The clip being taken out of context is important here. It fuels outrage, strengthens red pill beliefs, and paints a one-sided narrative. The second case takes us deeper into the looksmaxxing trend, where self-improvement meets obsession. In one TikTok, a creator gives a step-by-step guide on how to use the hammer method, literally encouraging viewers to hit parts of their face to force bone growth and reshape their features. The comments are shocking. Key to ascension. My leader, you gotta hit hard until it bruises. This isn't just about appearance, it's about pain, devotion, and a desperate belief that looks equal worth. And the monetization of this, through affiliate links, paid content, and the promotion of kits and products, is what makes it even more dangerous. Finally, we turn to forums like r/howtolooksmax, where users post photos of themselves to ask for advice. In one post, a man shares his photo asking for Looksmaxxing tips. The replies: wake up, start steroids, you need surgery, lighten your skin, you're not tall enough, at least 6 feet. These aren't just beauty tips, this is psychological violence dressed up as advice, and it reveals the disturbing undercurrent of racism, colorism, and internalized hate that runs through some parts of the Looksmaxxing community.
Okay, so turning to some more specific research and data, a 2024 survey reported that 56% of men in the US felt that social media promotes an unattainable body image. And while unfortunately this might not be a surprising statistic at this point, what's most relevant here, I think, is how what is deemed normal, healthy, or average sort of becomes distorted amidst the consumption of this content, which is just pushing one sort of very unattainable, very unhealthy ideal. A different study had participants rate how muscular they thought certain bodies were, and as the musculature of these bodies grew more and more extreme, examples which the participants initially rated as muscular, they later rated as merely average or non-muscular, quite often, again showing how quickly this distortion of what's normal, what's healthy can occur. And while these studies are a bit more general, I think they can be applied to the content we're talking about, specifically in this way. How after sort of consuming content which sort of fantasizes about or obsesses over this very unattainable, very unhealthy ideal, people lose any sort of grounding in reality of the myriad diversity of body types and how people look. And so I think these studies are sort of very generative in that way. Moving on to a slightly different angle, there's Tom Klukas, the sociologist, has some really interesting essays on what he terms online vitriol, specifically within common culture. He sort of says that online hate is really exacerbated by the anonymity of online spaces. Specifically, he highlights the phenomenon of trolling, this idea that, this vitriolic hate is sort of couched in irony, in what the commenter might play off as a joke. And so this hate is allowed to prevail and goes uncommented on because of the tone with which it's sort of put out into the world. And he links this to the legitimization of various far-right ideologies, basically arguing that these online spaces, things which start as jokes in these online spaces become legitimate ideologies. And I think it works much in the same way with the quote-unquote red pill or Looksmaxxing content. For many people in the world, this content is merely a troll or a joke. It's kind of a ridiculous thing that goes on online. But because it's couched in this kind of trolling language, this sort of ironic position within the larger online space, the hate and sort of dangerous, unhealthy attitudes which proliferate within it continue. And this is why we need to turn the critical lens back around onto this content. And then just quickly some conclusions. While the effects of social media on male body image is relatively understudied still, it's clear that this type of content preys on insecurities common in young men, and once trapped sort of within the rabbit holes and echo chambers of this content, young men end up with a severely distorted perception of what's average, what's healthy. And so again, we need to be more critical. We need to apply media literacy to this topic and not just treat it as a joke. We need to turn the critical lens onto the online logics which allow for this kind of content to go uncommented upon.